wind on State Street didn't just blow, it bit. It had teeth gnawing through the thin, threadbare wool of Violet Sterling's coat, seeking the warmth she was desperately trying to conserve for the two small hands gripped tightly in her own. "Mommy, my toes hurt," Leo whispered, his voice trembling. He was trying to be brave, just like his father had taught him before the accident. But he was only 6. Bravery didn't stop frostbite. "I know, baby, I know," Violet said, squeezing his hand. "We're almost there. Just a few more steps. We're going to have a big Christmas dinner, okay? Just like we promised." "With turkey?" Mia asked, her large green eyes looking up at Violet with a hope that shattered Violet's heart into 1,000 jagged pieces. "Maybe not turkey, sweetie," Violet choked out, fighting back tears, "but something hot, something cheesy, the best Christmas dinner ever." She patted the pocket of her coat with her free hand. A crumbled $10 bill and 5 singles. $15. That was it. That was the sum total of her life's savings after the landlord had taken the rest for the back rent on their studio apartment. A damp, mouldy room that smelled like despair. Her late husband, Daniel, had been a good man, a construction worker who worked hard and loved harder. But when the scaffolding collapsed 2 years ago, the company lawyers had buried her in paperwork until the settlement money vanished into legal fees. Now, she was a widow at 26, scrubbing floors under the table to keep Leo and Mia from the foster system. They reached the neon sign of Bernie's Burger Joint. It flickered ominously, the letter B buzzing and dying every few seconds. It wasn't the Ritz, it wasn't even a TGI Fridays, but it was open, and it was cheap. "Okay, team," Violet said, forcing a bright smile that didn't reach her tired eyes. "Shoulders back, chins up. Sterlings don't slink." They pushed through the heavy glass door. The heat hit them like a physical wall, smelling of stale grease, burnt coffee, and floor cleaner. The diner was mostly empty, save for a trucker asleep in the back booth and an elderly couple sharing a slice of pie in silence near the window. Violet guided the twins to a booth in the corner, away from the drafty door. As she helped them peel off their worn-out mittens, she saw the diner owner, a heavy-set man named Frank, with grease stains on his apron, glaring at them from behind the counter. Frank hated loiterers, and he hated people who didn't tip. Violet was usually both, not by choice, but by necessity. She picked up the laminated menu. The prices had gone up. Coffee was now $3. A burger was $12. Her heart hammered against her ribs. $15. If she bought 2 kids' meals with tax, she'd be over budget. If she bought drinks, she'd be over. "I want a milkshake," Leo said, pointing at the picture. "And fries," Mia added. Violet swallowed the lump in her throat. "Actually, guys, I heard the grilled cheese here is magical. Like, Santa eats it. And if we get the super platter, it's so big we can all share it. It's a contest, us against the sandwich." The twins looked skeptical, but they trusted her. They always trusted her. "Can we get water?" Leo asked. "Water is the best part," Violet lied smoothly. "It makes the cheese taste cheesier." She walked up to the counter. Frank didn't look up from wiping a glass that was already clean. "Table 4, Violet said softly. "1 super grilled cheese platter. Extra fries, please. And 3 waters." Frank looked up then. His eyes scanned her worn coat, her messy hair, and the 2 shivering kids in the booth. He sneered. "Kitchen closes in 20 minutes. Don't make a mess, and pay up front." Violet felt the heat rise in her cheeks. "I always pay, Frank." "Yeah, well, it's Christmas Eve. I got places to be. That'll be $14.50. Violet's hand shook as she pulled out the bills. She smoothed them out on the counter. $14.50. That left her with 50 cents. No tip. Frank snatched the money, counting it with exaggerated slowness. 50 cents left. You really know how to live it up, don't you, Duchess? Just the food, please, Violet whispered, turning her back on him before he could see the tear that escaped her eye. She walked back to the booth and slid in next to Mia. She wrapped her arms around both of them, pulling them into her side. It's coming, guys. The feast is coming. But as they waited, the atmosphere in the diner shifted. The air grew heavy, static-charged. The trucker in the back woke up and hurriedly paid his bill, leaving without finishing his coffee. The elderly couple near the window gathered their things and scurried out the door, heads bowed. Violet looked up. Outside, 3 black SUVs had pulled up to the curb, blocking the entrance. They were sleek, polished, and terrifyingly out of place in this run-down neighborhood. The door to the diner opened, and the bell chimed, a cheerful sound that felt completely wrong for the man who walked in. He was tall, well over 6 feet, wearing a black cashmere coat that probably cost more than Violet would earn in a lifetime. His hair was dark, swept back, and his face was a landscape of sharp angles and hard lines. But it was his eyes that froze the room. They were cold, calculating, and the color of steel. 2 men flanked him, huge, bulky men with earpieces and scars. Frank, the rude owner, suddenly looked like he was about to faint. He rushed out from behind the counter, wiping his hands nervously on his dirty apron. Mr. Moretti, Frank stammered. I wasn't expecting you. The back room is open, I'll sit here, the man said. His voice was deep, a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. He pointed to the booth directly across from Violet. Violet froze. She knew that name. Moretti. Gabriel Moretti. The newspapers called him a businessman. The streets called him the Devil of Chicago. He owned the unions, the docks, and half the police force. He was the reason the city was quiet, but it was the quiet of a graveyard. He sat down, his back to the door. His bodyguards took up positions at the entrance and the kitchen door. Gabriel unbuttoned his coat, revealing a tailored suit and the glint of a silver watch. He didn't look at Frank. He didn't look at the menu. He just sat there, staring at the table, looking like a man who carried the weight of 1,000 sins. Violet looked down at her twins. Don't look at him, she prayed. Just be invisible. But Mia, innocent and bored, was staring right at the scary man in the expensive coat. And then, to Violet's horror, Mia waved. Gabriel Moretti did not like Christmas. To him, it was a holiday for liars, people pretending to be charitable for one day before going back to cutting each other's throats on the 26th. He was currently sitting in this God-forsaken diner because his own house, a sprawling mansion in Lake Forest, felt like a mausoleum. He needed noise. He needed the smell of grease and reality. He was brooding over a deal that had gone south with the Russians when he saw the movement in his peripheral vision. A small hand, waving. Gabriel turned his head slowly. Across the aisle, in a booth where the vinyl was taped together with duct tape, sat a woman and 2 children. The woman was terrified. He could smell her fear. It was a scent he was intimately familiar with. She was staring at the table, her knuckles white as she gripped the children's hands. She was beautiful, in a shattered sort of way. Pale skin, dark circles under eyes that were a startling shade of violet, and hair that had escaped a messy bun. But the girl, the little one with the messy pigtails, was grinning at him. "Hi," Mia chirped. "Mia, hush," the woman whispered frantically. "Eat your water." Gabriel almost smirked. Eat your water. The desperation in that sentence hit him harder than he expected. Frank came rushing out of the kitchen with a plastic red tray. He slammed it down on Violet's table with unnecessary force. The waters sloshed over the rims. "1 super grilled cheese," Frank announced loudly, sneering. "And don't ask for refills. I'm cutting the soda fountain in 10 minutes. The super platter was a joke. It was 2 slices of white bread, barely toasted, with a single slice of processed yellow cheese melted in the middle. The extra fries were a handful of soggy, cold potato sticks. Violet stared at the food. It looked pathetic. It wasn't enough for 1 child, let alone 3 people. "Is that it?" Leo asked, his voice small. "Where's the rest?" That's the special appetizer portion," Violet improvised, her voice cracking. "We have to eat this slowly to savor the flavor, okay?" Frank snorted as he walked past their table toward Gabriel. "Sorry about the noise, Mr. Moretti. I can toss them out if they're bothering you. Just some stray cat and her kittens looking for a handout." Gabriel didn't look at Frank. He looked at the single grilled cheese sandwich. He watched the woman carefully cut it into 2 halves, sliding 1 to the boy and 1 to the girl. She kept nothing for herself. She picked up a single fry that had fallen onto the tray and nibbled on it, pretending she was full. Frank was hovering. "Mr. Moretti, can I get me a menu," Gabriel said, his voice flat. "Of course. And brings me a bottle of the Chianti, the one you keep in the back for yourself, not the vinegar you serve the customers." Frank paled. "Yes, sir." Gabriel watched the family. The boy, Leo, pushed half of his half-sandwich back toward his mother. "Mommy, you eat. I'm not that hungry." "I ate a big lunch while you were at school," Violet lied. "Eat, Leo. Please." The boy took a bite, but he looked miserable. Frank returned with the wine and a glass. He poured it with a shaking hand. Then, feeling emboldened by Gabriel's silence, Frank turned his aggression back to the easy target. He walked over to Violet's table. "Hey," Frank barked. "You kids are making a mess with those crumbs. I told you I ain't running a daycare. Hurry it up." Violet flinched. "We just got the food, Frank. We'll be done in 10 minutes. Make it 5. I got paying customers who need the space." "The place is empty," Violet snapped, her protective instinct overriding her fear. "There are 10 empty booths. Why are you doing this?" "Because I don't like loiterers," Frank spat. He reached out and grabbed the tray, threatening to pull it away before the kids were finished. "Maybe you should leave now." Mia started to cry. That was the sound that did it. There was a screech of chair legs against linoleum. "Let go of the tray, Frank." The voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a judge passing a death sentence. Frank froze. He looked back at Gabriel. Gabriel hadn't stood up. He was leaning back, swirling the wine in his glass, staring at the red liquid. "Mr. Moretti," I said. Gabriel looked up, his steel eyes locking onto the owner's sweating face. "Let go of the tray, and apologize to the lady." Frank laughed nervously. "Oh, come on, boss. She's nobody. She came in here with $15 in quarters. She's just trash taking up—" Crash. Gabriel's wine glass shattered against the wall inches from Frank's head. The red wine dripped down the peeling wallpaper like blood. Gabriel stood up. He unfolded his frame slowly, looming over the short, stout owner. The bodyguards at the door tensed, hands moving to the inside of their jackets. "In my neighborhood," Gabriel said, walking slowly toward them, his shoes clicking on the dirty tile. "On Christmas Eve, we do not call mothers trash, and we certainly do not take food out of the mouths of children." He stopped at Violet's table. He looked down at her. Violet was trembling, pressing the children into her side, shielding them with her body. She looked up at him, terrified, but there was a fire in her eyes. A defiance. She was ready to fight him too, if she had to. Gabriel liked fire. He turned his gaze to Frank, Bring them everything, Frank blinked. What? Everything on the menu, Gabriel said calmly. Burgers, steaks, milkshakes, the apple pie, all of it. Fresh. Now. But who's going to pay for that? Frank asked stupidly. Gabriel reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a thick money clip, peeled off 5 $100 bills, and dropped them onto the sticky table. They landed next to Violet's pathetic pile of crumpled singles. I am, Gabriel said, and keep the change as a tip. But if you speak to her with that tone again, Frank, I'll buy this building, burn it down, and pave over it with you inside. Frank turned a shade of white, usually reserved for sheets. Right away, Mr. Moretti, right away. He scrambled back to the kitchen, shouting at the cook. Silence returned to the diner. Violet stared at the money on the table. $500. It was more than she made in 2 weeks. She looked up at the man standing over her. He wasn't looking at her, though. He was looking at Leo. Gabriel frowned. He leaned down slightly, squinting at the boy. Leo, emboldened by the man defending them, stared back. "What is your name, son?" Gabriel asked. "Leo," the boy said. Gabriel's eyes narrowed. He looked from the boy to the girl, and then finally to Violet. His gaze lingered on a small, tarnished silver locket hanging around Violet's neck. He recognized the crest etched faintly into the metal. "Leo," Gabriel repeated softly. He looked at Violet. "And you?" "Violet," she whispered. "Violet Sterling." "Sterling," Gabriel tested the name. "Your husband, was he Daniel Sterling?" Violet's breath hitched. "Yes. He died 2 years ago." "How did you know?" Gabriel didn't answer immediately. A strange emotion flickered across his face. Something like regret, or perhaps recognition. He buttoned his jacket. "Eat your dinner, Violet," Gabriel said, his voice softer now, almost gentle. "You're safe here." He turned and walked back to his booth, signaling his bodyguards to stand down. But he didn't leave. He sat there, watching them, like a wolf guarding a flock of sheep he hadn't decided whether to eat or protect. As the kitchen door swung open and the smell of fresh burgers filled the air, Violet realized 2 things. First, her children wouldn't go hungry tonight. Second, she had just caught the attention of the most dangerous man in the city, and she had a terrible feeling that he knew more about her dead husband than she did. The table was groaning under the weight of the food. Frank, motivated by fear and the crisp $100 bills now resting in his pocket, had outdone himself. There were stacks of pancakes smothered in syrup, a mountain of golden fries, 4 cheeseburgers, a chocolate milkshake for Leo, a strawberry one for Mia, and a steaming slice of apple pie. For the first few minutes, there was only the sound of eating. Violet watched her children with a mixture of overwhelming relief and a sharp, stinging guilt. They ate like they hadn't seen food in days, which wasn't far from the truth. She picked up a burger, her hands trembling slightly. The first bite was warm, salty, and savory. It tasted like salvation. Gabriel Moretti did not eat. He sipped his wine, his dark eyes moving from the children to the window, scanning the street, before returning to Violet. He seemed to be solving a complex equation in his head. Mia, her face smeared with ketchup and strawberry ice cream, suddenly stopped chewing. She picked up a French fry, the longest one on the plate, and held it out across the aisle toward the terrifying man in the black suit. "For you," she chirped. "For helping." Violet froze. "Mia, don't bother the—" "Thank you, Mia," Gabriel said. His voice dropped an octave, losing its harsh edge. He leaned forward, took the fry from her small hand, and ate it solemnly. The tension in the room broke, just a fracture, but it was enough for Violet to breathe. "You knew him," Violet said, her voice low so the kids wouldn't overhear the seriousness of the tone. She touched the locket at her throat. Daniel, you said you knew him. Gabriel swirled the last dregs of wine in his glass. I didn't just know him, Mrs. Sterling. Your husband saved my life. Violet's fork clattered onto the table. That's impossible. Daniel was a construction foreman. He wasn't involved in... She gestured vaguely at Gabriel, at his suit, his guards, the aura of danger that clung to him like cologne. In my world, Gabriel finished for her. No, he wasn't. He was a civilian, a good man. Gabriel placed the glass down. 3 years ago, I was inspecting a development project on the west side. It was a union dispute. Things got heated. Someone rigged the scaffolding. It was meant to come down on me. Violet's heart hammered against her ribs. She remembered that day. Daniel had come home covered in dust, shaking, saying there had been a near miss at the site. He never gave details. The rig collapsed, Gabriel continued, his eyes distant. I didn't see it coming. Daniel did. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know I was worth millions or that half the city wanted me dead. He just saw a man in danger. He tackled me, shoved me into the foundation pit, just as 2 tons of steel and concrete came down exactly where I had been standing. Violet covered her mouth. He never told me. He broke his arm, Gabriel said. I tried to pay him. I offered him a blank check right there in the rubble. Do you know what he said? Violet shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. He said, just make sure the site is safe for the boys tomorrow. And he walked away. Gabriel looked at Violet, his expression intense. I looked for him. I wanted to repay the debt. But I had complications, wars to fight. By the time I cleared the slate and looked for Daniel Sterling again, I found an obituary. The silence that followed was heavy. The twins were busy fighting over the last cherry on the milkshake, oblivious to the ghosts swirling around the table. The accident that killed him, Violet whispered, her voice trembling. The police said it was equipment failure. A crane snapped. Gabriel's face hardened. The temperature in the booth seemed to drop 10 degrees. It wasn't equipment failure, Violet. It was negligence. The company cut corners on maintenance to save a few grand. I looked into it after he died. I made sure the company went bankrupt. It didn't bring him back, Violet said bitterly. And the lawyers, they took everything. They said because he wasn't wearing his safety harness correctly, which is a lie. Daniel was obsessed with safety, that they weren't liable. We lost the house. We lost the savings. Now we have $15. Gabriel looked at the pile of cash he had left on the table. Not anymore. I can't take your money, Violet said, straightening her spine. Daniel wouldn't want charity. It's not charity, Gabriel corrected sharply. It's a debt, a life for a life. And in my family, we pay our debts. The interest has been accumulating for 2 years. He signaled to Frank. The owner rushed over, practically bowing. Box up the rest, Gabriel ordered, and bring the pie, whole. He stood up, buttoning his cashmere coat. You're leaving? Violet blinked. What? We're eating. You're done. It's snowing harder, and this neighborhood isn't safe after dark, especially not for a woman carrying $500 cash. Gabriel's eyes flicked to the window again. And my car is warm. I can take the bus, Violet protested, though the thought of waiting in the blizzard with 2 full, sleepy children was daunting. The buses stopped running an hour ago. Gabriel lied smoothly. He extended a hand. It was large, calloused, but perfectly manicured. Let me drive you home, Violet. For Daniel. Violet looked at his hand. Then she looked at Leo, whose eyes were drooping, and Mia, who was shivering despite the diner's heat. She swallowed her pride. "Okay," she whispered. "Just to the apartment." The ride was silent, but it was the most luxurious silence Violet had ever experienced. Gabriel's SUV was a beast, an armored Cadillac Escalade with tinted windows and leather seats that felt like butter. The interior smelled of expensive leather and peppermint. Leo and Mia had fallen asleep instantly in the back seat, lulled by the heated seats and the gentle hum of the engine. Violet sat in the front passenger seat, her hands clutching her worn purse. Gabriel drove. His bodyguards were in a second SUV trailing behind them. "Where to?" Gabriel asked. 42nd and Pine. "The brick building on the corner," Violet said softly. Gabriel's grip on the steering wheel tightened. He knew that area. It was the sump, gang territory, drug dens. It was no place for a widow and 2 children. He didn't say anything, but his jaw clenched. As they drove through the city, the Christmas lights of the wealthy districts faded, replaced by broken street lamps and boarded-up windows. When they pulled up to Violet's building, the reality of her situation hit Gabriel like a physical blow. The building was a crumbling tenement. The front door was propped open with a cinder block. Graffiti covered the brickwork. A group of men stood on the corner, huddled around a trash can fire, watching the expensive cars pull up with predatory eyes. "You live here?" Gabriel asked, his voice low. "It's what we can afford," Violet said defensively. "It has a roof." "Barely," Gabriel muttered. He killed the engine, but didn't unlock the doors. He was looking at the rearview mirror. The men on the corner were on their phones. "Wait here," Gabriel commanded. He got out. His 2 bodyguards, massive men named Luca and Dante, stepped out of the trailing vehicle. The presence of 3 well-dressed, dangerous-looking men shifted the energy on the street immediately. The group on the corner dispersed, vanishing into the shadows. Gabriel opened Violet's door. "I'm walking you up." "You don't have to. I'm walking you up," he repeated, reaching into the back to gently lift a sleeping Leo into his arms. Dante stepped forward and picked up Mia without waking her. Violet led the way. The hallway smelled of boiled cabbage and stale urine. The elevator was out of order, so they walked up 4 flights of stairs. Violet fumbled with her keys at apartment 4B. When she pushed the door open, a blast of freezing air hit them. "It's freezing in here," Gabriel noted, stepping inside. He looked around. The apartment was a single room, a mattress on the floor for the kids, a pull-out couch for Violet, a small kitchenette. The window had a crack in it, taped over with cardboard, but the wind whistled through it anyway. There was no Christmas tree, just a small paper drawing of a tree taped to the wall, colored in with crayons. Gabriel Moretti had seen violence. He had seen torture. He had seen death. But seeing this, the absolute poverty of the man who had saved his life, made him feel a rage so white-hot it almost blinded him. He laid Leo down on the mattress and covered him with the thin blanket. Dante did the same with Mia. "The heater is broken," Violet explained, rushing to turn on the stove burners to generate some warmth. "The landlord said he'd fix it next week." "Next week is January," Gabriel said coldly. He walked over to the window and touched the taped cardboard. "This is unacceptable." "We manage," Violet said, though she was hugging herself to stop from shivering. "We're together. That's what matters." Gabriel turned to face her. "Violet, you can't—" He stopped. His eyes narrowed. He was looking past her, at the small table by the door. There was a stack of mail. But on top of the mail was a distinctive envelope. It was thick, creamy paper with a wax seal. It wasn't a bill. It was a summons. "Where did you get that?" Gabriel asked, his voice sharp. He pointed to the envelope. Violet looked confused. I don't know. It was slid under the door when we got home yesterday. I haven't opened it. I thought it was another eviction notice. Gabriel walked over and picked it up. The seal was a serpent eating its own tail, the mark of the O'Connell crime family, the Irish mob, rivals to the Morettis, but usually they stayed on the north side. He tore it open. He didn't ask for permission. He read the single card inside. His face went pale, then red with fury. The sins of the husband are visited upon the wife. We know what he hid, Mrs. Sterling. You have until Christmas Day to return the drive, or the twins pay the price. What? Violet asked, stepping closer. What is it? Gabriel crushed the card in his fist. Violet, what did Daniel bring home before he died? A hard drive? A USB stick? A laptop? I don't know, Violet stammered, frightened by the change in his demeanor. He had a box. He told me never to open it unless I was in trouble. It's in the closet. I never opened it because I didn't want to believe he was really gone. Get it, Gabriel ordered. Now. Why? Gabriel, you're scaring me. Someone thinks Daniel stole something, Gabriel said rapidly, checking his watch. The O'Connells. If they left this note yesterday, they've been watching you. They know you're here. Crack. The sound was sharp, like a whip. The window, the one with the cardboard, shattered inward. Gabriel moved faster than humanly possible. He tackled Violet, bringing her to the floor just as a second bullet thudded into the wall where her head had been a second ago. Luca! Dante! Get the kids! Gabriel roared. The apartment erupted into chaos. Dante grabbed both sleeping children, shielding them with his massive body as he dragged them toward the hallway. Luca kicked the apartment door wide open, his gun drawn. Stay down! Gabriel hissed at Violet, covering her body with his own. He pulled a sleek black handgun from a holster beneath his jacket. My kids! Violet screamed. They have them! We're moving! Now! Gabriel hauled her to her feet, keeping her bent low. They sprinted into the hallway. The sound of tires screeching outside filled the air. They waited for us to drop you off, Gabriel realized, his mind racing. They waited until my guard was down. They reached the stairs. Dante was already halfway down with the twins. Where are we going? Violet cried, her mind unable to process that she had gone from eating apple pie to dodging bullets in under an hour. Gabriel grabbed her arm, pulling her down the stairs. He looked at her, and the steel in his eyes was gone, replaced by a fierce, terrifying promise. We're going to my house, he said, because you just became the most important target in this city, and nobody touches what belongs to me. Violet didn't have time to argue. She didn't have time to ask what he meant by belongs to me. She just ran, the cold air burning her lungs, as the shadow of her husband's secret life finally caught up to them. The drive to Lake Forest took 40 minutes of white-knuckled tension. The snow had turned into a blizzard, effectively sealing off the city behind them. When the heavy iron gates of the Moretti estate swung open, Violet felt like she was entering another world. The house wasn't a house. It was a fortress, disguised as a French chateau. Floodlights illuminated the snow-covered grounds, revealing high stone walls and patrolling guards with Rottweilers. We're here, Gabriel said, his voice tight. The car stopped under the porte-cochere. Dante opened the back door, and Violet hurried to help him with the twins. They were groggy, confused, but thankfully unharmed. Inside, the mansion was breathtakingly cold. Not in temperature. The air was warm, but in spirit. The floors were marble, the ceilings vaulted, and the furniture looked like it belonged in a museum, not a home. There were no photos on the walls, no clutter, no life. Dante, take the children to the guest wing. Get Maria to set them up with warm baths and whatever food they want, Gabriel ordered. taking off his coat. He revealed a shoulder holster that made Violet shudder. "I'm not leaving my children," Violet said, her voice shaking but firm. Gabriel turned to her. "You are going to the library with me. We need to open that box. Your children are safer with Dante than they would be with the President of the United States. Go." Violet hesitated, looking at Leo and Mia. Leo gave a sleepy thumbs up. "It's a castle, Mum," he mumbled. She nodded, kissed their foreheads, and watched them disappear up the grand staircase. Then she turned to the Wolf of Chicago. "Okay, let's finish this." They went into the library, a room smelling of old paper and brandy. Gabriel poured himself a drink, but didn't offer her one. He pointed to the mahogany desk. Violet placed the shoebox she had retrieved from her closet on the polished surface. "I never opened it," she whispered. "Daniel said, he said it was insurance. I thought he meant a life insurance policy." "Open it," Gabriel said. Violet's hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside, there were no policy papers. There was a stack of photos, a USB drive, and a handwritten letter addressed to My Vi. She picked up the letter. Tears blurred her vision as she recognized Daniel's messy scrawl. "Vi, if you're reading this, I messed up. I saw something at the shipyard site. I should have walked away, but I couldn't. I recorded it. I thought I could use it to get us out of debt, to buy us a real house. But these guys, they aren't just corrupt, they're evil. Hide the drive. Don't trust the police. I love you. Tell the twins their dad tried to be a hero." Violet sobbed, a raw, guttural sound that echoed in the large room. "He tried to blackmail them?" Gabriel picked up the USB drive. He plugged it into his laptop. "He was a desperate man trying to provide for his family, Violet. Desperation makes us do stupid things." He clicked on the single video file. The video was grainy, shot from a phone, likely through a hole in a construction tarp. It showed a rainy night at the docks. Two men were arguing. One was a large, red-faced man, Patrick O'Connell, the head of the Irish mob. The other man was older, wearing a suit. "That's Senator Thorne," Gabriel murmured, his eyes narrowing, the head of the Urban Development Committee. In the video, O'Connell handed Thorne a briefcase. Thorne opened it, revealing stacks of cash. Then, O'Connell pulled out a gun and shot a third man who was kneeling on the ground, a man wearing a Union jacket. "Jimmy Hoffa style," Gabriel whispered. "They killed the Union rep to push the contract through." The video ended. Gabriel leaned back, running a hand through his dark hair. This is a nuclear bomb. Daniel was sitting on evidence that could put the O'Connell family on death row and impeach a sitting senator. "And they killed him for it," Violet said, her voice hardening. The tears stopped. A cold anger replaced them. "It wasn't an accident. The crane." "No," Gabriel said. "They sabotaged it. They killed him, but they couldn't find the drive. They must have thought it was destroyed in the rubble. But 2 years later, they're cleaning up loose ends. Maybe the senator is running for governor, and they can't risk this surfacing." "So they came for my kids," Violet hissed. She looked at Gabriel. "You have to destroy them." Gabriel looked at her, surprised by the venom in her tone. "Destroying them starts a war, Violet. A war that will burn Chicago to the ground." "You said you pay your debts," she challenged him, stepping closer. She looked small next to him, but she didn't flinch. "You said my husband saved your life. Well, they took his. Balance the ledger, Gabriel." Gabriel stared at her. For the first time in a decade, he felt a spark of something other than calculation. He felt admiration. "I will," he promised darkly. "But first, we have to survive Christmas." Violet woke up to the smell of pancakes. And pine? She shot up in bed. She was in a room the size of her entire apartment. The sheets were silk. For a second, she panicked, forgetting where she was. Then the memories of the gunfire and the library crashed back in. She threw on the oversized robe Gabriel had provided. It smelled like sandalwood and him, and ran out into the hallway. She followed the sound of giggles. Downstairs, in the main living room, stood a 12-foot-tall Christmas tree. It was perfectly decorated with gold and silver ornaments. Underneath it, there were piles of wrapped gifts. Mia and Leo were sitting on the floor, still in their pajamas, ripping open boxes. Gabriel Moretti was sitting in a wing-back chair, drinking coffee, looking utterly out of place. He was wearing a dark grey sweater, the most casual thing she'd ever seen him in, and watching the children with a look of baffled amusement. "Mommy!" Leo yelled, holding up a remote-controlled car. "Look, Santa found us. He knew we were at the castle." Violet walked slowly into the room. She looked at Gabriel. "You did this?" she asked softly. "I made a call," Gabriel said dismissively, not meeting her eyes. "My assistant, Luca, enjoys shopping. He cleared out a toy store at 3 a.m. This is too much." "They have nothing, Violet," Gabriel said, his voice low so the kids wouldn't hear. "Let them have one morning where they aren't worried about being hungry or cold." Violet watched Mia hug a giant teddy bear. She felt a lump in her throat. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Gabriel said, standing up. "We have a problem." He motioned for her to follow him into the kitchen. The kitchen was staffed by a matronly woman named Maria, who was currently feeding the twins bacon. Gabriel led Violet to the far end of the room, near the espresso machine. He looked tired. He hadn't slept. "I spoke to my contacts this morning," Gabriel said. "The O'Connells know you're here. They know I have you." "Are they coming here?" Violet asked, gripping the marble counter. "They aren't stupid. They can't storm this house. It's a fortress. But they are squeezing my business. They're threatening to expose my operations if I don't hand over the drive and you." "So give them the drive," Violet said. "Keep the copy. Leak it later." "It's not about the drive anymore," Gabriel said grimly. "It's about respect. If I hand you over, I look weak. If I look weak, my own captains will turn on me. I can't let you go, Violet. Not alive." Violet felt the blood drain from her face. "So what are we? Prisoners?" "No," Gabriel said. He took a step closer to her. The air between them crackled. "We have to change the narrative. The O'Connells think I'm protecting a witness. We need to make them think I'm protecting family." "I don't understand." "Tonight," Gabriel said, "is the mayor's Christmas gala. It's the biggest event of the year. Neutral ground. Everyone will be there. The O'Connells, Senator Thorne, the press." He paused, looking at her intently. "I'm going to take you there, and I'm going to introduce you as my fiancé." Violet choked on air. "Your what?" "If you are my fiancé," Gabriel explained, his eyes intense, "then an attack on you is a declaration of war against the entire Moretti bloodline. The other families, the 5 families of New York, the outfit in Vegas, they respect the code. You don't touch the wives. If O'Connell touches you after I claim you, he loses his allies. He stands alone. You want me to lie to the entire city? To the Mafia?" "I want you to stay alive," Gabriel corrected, "and it buys me time to dismantle O'Connell's empire from the inside using the drive." Violet looked at him. This man was crazy. He was dangerous. He was a criminal. But looking at him now, with the morning sun hitting his sharp jawline, she realized he was the only thing standing between her children and a grave. "I don't have a dress," she said quietly. Gabriel's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. It transformed his face. "I know. The stylist will be here in 20 minutes. The rest of the day was a blur of preparation. Violet was scrubbed, polished, and painted. A team of 3 women worked on her hair and makeup. When they finally zipped her into the dress, a deep emerald green velvet gown that hugged her curves and left her shoulders bare. She didn't recognize herself in the mirror. The tired, worn-out waitress was gone. In her place was a woman who looked like she could rule a kingdom. Gabriel walked into the room at 6 p.m. He was wearing a tuxedo. He stopped dead when he saw her. For a moment, the mask slipped. The ruthless boss vanished, replaced by a man struck dumb. "Violet," he breathed. "Is it too much?" she asked nervously, touching the diamond necklace he had sent up. "I feel like an imposter." Gabriel walked over to her. He stood behind her, looking at their reflection in the mirror. He placed his hands on her bare shoulders. His touch was electric. "You are not an imposter," he said, his voice rough. "You are a survivor. That makes you more royal than anyone else in that room tonight." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. It was a vintage diamond, large and heavy. "This was my mother's," he said. "Put it on." Violet slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "Remember," Gabriel whispered, leaning down so his lips brushed her ear. "Tonight you love me. You adore me. You are the woman who tamed the beast." "And you?" Violet asked, turning to face him, her breath catching. "What am I to you?" Gabriel looked at her, his dark eyes unreadable. "Tonight, you are mine." He offered her his arm. "Let's go start a war." The grand ballroom of the Palmer House Hotel was a sea of diamonds, silk, and hypocrisy. The city's elite, politicians, judges, and crime lords pretending to be businessmen mingled under the crystal chandeliers. But the low hum of conversation vanished the moment the double doors swung open. Gabriel Moretti walked in, his arm linked with a woman who looked like a queen in emerald velvet. Violet kept her chin high, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She felt the weight of 300 pairs of eyes on her. She spotted the whispers immediately. "Who is she? Is that Moretti? I thought he never brought dates." "Breathe," Gabriel whispered, his hand covering hers on his arm. His touch was grounding, warm and possessive. "You're doing perfect. Just look at me." They moved through the crowd like sharks parting a school of fish. Gabriel greeted judges with a nod and ignored his rivals completely, but Violet saw them. Standing near the buffet was Patrick O'Connell, a bull of a man with a red face and a glass of whiskey that looked tiny in his fist. Beside him was Senator Thorne, looking pale and nervous. O'Connell's eyes locked onto Violet. Recognition flared, followed by a dark, murderous rage. He took a step forward, but Thorne grabbed his elbow, whispering furiously. "Showtime," Gabriel murmured. He led Violet directly toward the lions. The circle of socialites parted as Gabriel approached. The air grew cold. "Senator," Gabriel said smoothly. "Patrick, enjoying the festivities?" "Moretti," O'Connell grunted, his eyes stripping Violet down to her soul. "Didn't know you had a +1. A bit common, isn't she?" Gabriel's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Careful, Patrick. You're speaking about my fiancé." The word dropped like a bomb. A collective gasp rippled through the nearby listeners. Thorne choked on his champagne. "Fiancé?" Thorne stammered. I didn't know you were seeing anyone." "It's a recent development," Gabriel said, pulling Violet closer. "And I'm very protective of my future family. In fact, Violet was just telling me a fascinating story about her late husband, a construction worker. Daniel Sterling." The colour drained from Thorne's face entirely. O'Connell's hand drifted toward his jacket pocket. "I don't know who that is," O'Connell lied, his voice a low growl. "Funny," Violet spoke up. Her voice was steady, clearer than she ever thought possible. She channeled every ounce of anger she had felt for the last 2 years, for the cold nights, the hunger, the fear. "You sent me a card about him yesterday. You threatened my children." "You little—" O'Connell surged forward. Gabriel stepped in front of her, a wall of black wool and muscle. "Touch her," Gabriel said softly, "and I will carve you up right here in front of the mayor." The tension was so thick it was suffocating. Security guards were edging closer. "You have nothing," O'Connell sneered, realizing a scene would ruin him. "You're bluffing. You don't have the drive." Gabriel checked his watch. "You're right. I don't have it." He looked up at the massive projection screens on either side of the stage, which were currently displaying photos of the charity work. "I gave it to the tech crew about 10 minutes ago," Gabriel said. "What?" Thorne whispered. Suddenly the music cut out. The screens flickered. The smiling photos of orphans vanished. In their place, grainy footage appeared. The sound of rain hissed through the ballroom speakers, followed by O'Connell's voice, clear as day. "Do it! Put a bullet in him!" The ballroom erupted. Screams, shouts. The video showed the senator taking the cash. It showed the murder. "Turn it off!" Thorne screamed, waving at the tech booth. "Turn it off!" But it was too late. The doors to the ballroom burst open again. This time it wasn't guests. It was the FBI. Dozens of agents in windbreakers swarmed the room, guns drawn. "Patrick O'Connell, Senator Thorne, you are under arrest!" O'Connell tried to run, shoving a waiter into a table of glasses, but Gabriel simply extended a leg, tripping the mob boss. O'Connell crashed to the floor, and agents were on him in seconds, cuffs clicking. Gabriel stood amidst the chaos, calm as the eye of a hurricane. He turned to Violet, who was watching the arrest of the men who had killed her husband. "Is it over?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. Gabriel wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "The debt is paid, Violet. Daniel can rest now." "And us?" she asked, looking up at him. "The play is over. The engagement. It was just a strategy." Gabriel looked down at the ring on her finger. He looked at the chaos around them, his rivals destroyed, his city secured, and the woman who had walked into a firestorm beside him without flinching. Strategy, Gabriel mused. He leaned down, ignoring the flashing cameras and the shouting agents. He kissed her, deep and real, a kiss that tasted of victory and promise. When he pulled back, he smiled. A real smile. "I don't like breaking contracts, Mrs. Sterling. I think we should keep this one." Violet laughed, a sound that felt like freedom. "I think I'd like that." In the weeks that followed, the trial of Senator Thorne and the O'Connell crime family became the biggest scandal in Chicago history. But the tabloids were more interested in the Cinderella widow, who had captured the heart of the city's most elusive bachelor. Violet and the twins moved into the Lake Forest estate permanently. Leo and Maya got their own rooms, a golden retriever named Lucky, and a stepfather who would burn the world down before letting anyone harm a hair on their heads. Gabriel Moretti retired from the darker side of his business, focusing on legitimate construction, building safe, affordable housing for families like the Sterlings. They say you can't buy happiness, and maybe that's true. But on a cold Christmas Eve, for the price of a $15 grilled cheese sandwich, Gabriel Moretti bought a second chance at a soul. And Violet Sterling? She got the one thing she thought she'd lost forever. A future.